Hello there, I'm back. Welcome back to the Sound Alchemy Podcast, the place where we talk about everything related to the musician life and how grim and dark the whole music industry looks like today. And today we're going to be discussing a particular situation that is very common among musicians. It's a condition, I would say, something kind of health related. It's a syndrome, actually, in which and that affects every musician. Every single one of us is partially infected already by the horrific and terrible virus known as gas, also known as gear acquisition syndrome. So, have you ever feel the need of getting more gear? Thiago Bergamini, the Stony Breath, who's saying hello to girls and boys.
Hello, girls and boys. How's it going? First and foremost, I'm very glad to be back, and it's great to have you here as well.
Look at that! Not taking advantage of his solo shot.
Of course not, because the buttons are different places.
Look at that!
Hello, girls and boys.
Uh-huh.
Yes, and the whole thing with gear acquisition syndrome. Yes, I have been a victim of this sad illness, but I recovered. I'm now I'm now reformed. I must say.
That's clearly what somebody who hasn't recovered would say.
I can stop whenever I want.
Yes, because it's something that I decided to get into, and I will decide when to get out.
Exactly.
By myself, of course. It wasn't you being pushed by videos you saw on YouTube or wherever, right?
No, that doesn't happen.
So first and foremost, what does that mean? What does gear acquisition syndrome stands for?
So gear acquisition syndrome basically is the compulsion that we musicians have to simply acquire more gear in the pursuit of many things. And that can be part of the conversation.
Yes.
Why? Let me actually turn that into a question. Why do you think that we musicians want to get more gear often?
Well, I think it's because human beings like to hoard stuff. Hoard. Stuff. And you simply like to collect, and you simply like to own stuff, right? So that's something that is basically a good chunk of what we do as human beings. That's super normal and natural. That's thing number one. Thing number two, and I think is the most problematic one. When it comes to music, I think when you grow up developing your own tone and stuff, you like to put the blame on the gear you're using rather than on your skills. Because at that point in your path, well, you have no skills whatsoever.
Yeah.
So it's easy for you to put the blame on something that is not you.
Yeah.
Because that means no responsibility at all. And I think that's the beginning of the illness. Because from there onwards, you always try to find the next big thing that would make you Jimi Hendrix.
Look, to give a little bit of framing to the conversation, because getting gear is not necessarily intrinsically a problem.
No, and it's something that if you get into this whole thing, professionally speaking, get into music, you need to keep always buying new stuff. Why? Technology advances, and for example, right now we're in this modular simulation era. For those of you who don't know what this stands for, a guitar modeler, for example, Tonix is the one that I use. Let me get this out of the way.
Yes, it's very much in front.
Yeah, now it's working. A guitar modeler such as Tonix, look at that, perfect. Simply put, it replaced any form of amplifiers on the stage for me. And even here in the studio when it comes to tracking, because in one pedal I have access to very realistic, extremely convincing guitar sounds or amplifier sounds, to be precise. Not only that, it even has cabinets and even effects on board. So one pedal does everything. So simply put, it removed out of the equation the need of a gigantic pedal board and cabinets and guitar amplifiers for basically everybody, and at a very affordable price, mind you. But that doesn't stop people from keep buying stuff. And in my case, the use of technology will simplify the use of the whole thing of performing live. So in that case, it works. Also in the studio, depending on what you do, but if you're producing rock bands, there is always the need of a new pedal. Why? Not everywhere plays the same way.
Yeah.
Not every track you're working on is looking for that for the same sound. And even though you might own one of the best amplifiers ever, let's say you own a Dumble, and you have a clone pedal, and you have a Les Paul guitar made by Les Paul himself. What if the three of them doesn't make sense with the guitar player you're working with?
How dare you?
It's super possible, man. It's super possible. So you need an option. and maybe a humble tube screamer would be the solution to the problem.
Yeah.
So you start to see that you need more options in that regard. But I'm going to the very extremes of the musician, right, or the professional, because
the different scenarios in which variety is actually important.
It's important. Let's say you're a professional hired musician, a hired gun. Someone like that will require to be adaptable and to be ready for any form of session he's going to be working on.
Yeah.
So having a big pedal board, it's important. Having a good collection of guitars, important. Even amplifiers as well.
Yeah.
But for the vast majority of people, man, I see, and those are the ones who are actually the victims of this syndrome.
And especially because on the most part, I feel that the whole thing with gear acquisition syndrome is a way bigger issue on hobbyists than it is on people with actual professional applications
because
for the gear.
When you do it as a hobby, you don't feel that much of a pressure on spending money on it, right? Because when you do it professionally, you're expecting whatever you invest your money on to make a return, right? So the mentality is very different.
You are way more conscious on how you spend your money, your resources.
It's a decision rather than a matter of taste. In this case, like, if I buy this, I won't be getting that, and if I buy this and this doesn't bring more money to the table, to this conversation, well, I'm going to be missing out. That's actually going to hurt my income.
And even, like, let's say a gigging musician, a gigging guitar player, usually he's going to try to make his pedal board, for instance, as slim, as small as possible.
Like a cover band guy.
Yeah, because he's going to be carrying it around to many different places. And if he has a monstrosity, it's going to be very impractical to be carrying it around.
Also, stages, sizes, and real estate changes from venue to venue.
Yeah.
So having something very big is cumbersome and stupid.
Yeah, so many times you see some of the most absurdly big pedal boards being used by hobbyists rather than professional musicians as well.
But if you're talking about John Frusciante, that's something
there are of
else.
Course some exceptions.
That guy
to that
has
rule.
like an army just carrying his stuff around from show to show, but that's very unique. It's that doesn't happen often.
No.
So and why do you think we started off with guitar players?
Because
I don't know why I have a certain impression that there might be a reason why guitar players are probably the biggest victims of this.
Yeah, they're definitely one of the most common victims of this syndrome. It's very sad, but it is very real. I think because of pedals mostly, because guitar players in the form of pedals, they have the opportunity or the misfortune to get boxes that are not that expensive, like a single pedal is not gonna break the bank for anyone.
Let's say you go for one of the fancy ones, like $200.
Yeah, so I won't say that that's cheap for a piece of gear, but it's far from an absurd amount of money.
Yeah,
and you can do that on a frequent basis and always feel like you're getting something new.
I can imagine even some people having a monthly budget for pedals.
Yeah,
because they're not that expensive. You see where I'm going, right?
Yeah,
where I'm going with this. It's possible for you to acquire a new pedal monthly.
Yeah,
and even through if you allow yourself to do it, because they are kind of affordable in that regard. So it's very common for guitar players to get quite into the whole. Let me get another one, because there is some form of addiction that happens when you do pedals, and I think it's a huge problem, man.
So I'll actually ask you a question now, because you're a guitar player.
Yes, allegedly.
How can a guitar player spot? Okay, I have enough.
Look,
or it's time to buy more. How to draw the line?
Good point. I think this whole thing with hoarding gear from the guitar player perspective comes from the search and the quest for tone. Because
which is not a bad thing.
No, it's actually the correct way to actually progress in your guitar playing career.
Yeah.
Because you need to develop a good sounding guitar tone before you. Well, it's as integral as learning how to play the guitar correctly. So you are always in the lookout for ways to expand what you already got, or even if you go a little bit backwards, trying to solidify or make what you have in your head manifest in reality, making it real.
Yeah.
Because every single one of us has the ideal guitar tone in our heads, and sometimes it's due, and most of the time is due to lack of understanding of how to dial a proper amplifier or how equipment actually works. What pushes people from getting there and finally nailing the guitar tone that they are looking for.
Yeah.
That's one thing. And secondly, because they start to think that it's just a matter of getting that particular piece of gear.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a guitar, it could be an amplifier, it could be a particular cabinet, or of course pedals, which is the usual and is the most common one due to the affordability of them.
Yeah.
That's a big problem, man. Because working here in the studio, I met several guitar players that show up. Some of them, and it was fun because it's been the two extremes. Some of them have never owned a guitar pedal in their lives, and they've been playing for 10 years, for example. And they didn't know how to get the tone that they already had in their heads. They wanted to have a particular tone, and during the pre-production sessions, they were quite keen to pinpoint at the tone they were looking for. But when the moment came, they couldn't dial it up. So I had to help them. But that's when the ownership of several pedals in the studio comes in hand.
Yeah,
and
makes sense.
having options when it comes to amplifiers. But that's only when it's justifiable.
Yeah.
But then I had the other extreme. Guys showing up with gigantic rigs, then as soon as they plug them in, this is a mess, dude. Why? Because they dial up the sound of their entire rig based on what they got out of their bedroom, man. Or never done it in front or in the mix.
Yeah, in the context of
in the
music.
context of actual music. So either guitar players tend to be very heavy on the low ends, cluttering the sound of the kick and the bass, ruining the mix or making the whole thing sound terrible, or they are simply playing way too loud when they are rehearsing, that they never realized that they had a bad tone because they were just blasted and they liked it. Because let's face it, there's nothing more glorious than playing an E minor chord in front of a properly cranked up Marshall, man.
And that's actually something that is often said in the mixing production circles.
Yeah.
Which is don't confuse louder for better.
Yeah.
Which is something that is very, very common to see guitar players make. Not only guitar players, of course.
Every musician, man, because louder is exciting, man. And when you get excited, you play better. And when you play better, you feel better. So
I think that is also very, very even a caricature at this point in time. The whole thing about the guitar player cranking up the amp
up to 11.
So I'm not saying that it is exclusive to guitar players. It isn't.
Yeah.
But I say it's very common, perhaps even more common than most for guitar players.
Agreed. So during those years, I learned the importance of having pedals, and also why it is important, at least from the music production perspective, owning several options when it comes to amplifiers. But from there, you also see why somebody who collects amps or somebody who has 50 amps, 50 is really cool. Well, it happens. So I'm not gonna say that it's impossible. But let's say somebody who owns 10 guitar amplifiers. It's already too many.
It's already a lot.
Yeah, because in reality, how much hours is someone like him be able to spend on each of those boxes to actually learn them and to actually squeeze them out correctly?
Yeah.
It won't happen, man.
Yeah.
It won't happen. So it's more about, and if the hobby is collecting, no worries. That's totally respectable. But don't use the guitar playing as an excuse. That's what my 2 cents would be, man.
Yeah.
In a studio, it makes sense. Or even as a musician who is producing music constantly, somebody who's already working as a music producing musician, it's a good idea to own options.
Yeah.
But now with technology such as the guitar amplifiers, the modelers that I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation, that also kind of starts to become not necessarily justifiable, man, in my opinion.
But look, there's another angle to address here, because you mentioned that many times the whole thing, especially with guitar players, but applies more generally as well, the gear acquisition syndrome comes from the place of the pursuit of tone, which is fine in principle. Which is not fine is when the whole thing about not taking responsibility for the tone, just blaming the gear. You already mentioned it kind of passingly, but I think it's worth going a little bit deeper down into it. Because if you attribute the bad tone that you're getting to the gear simply not being the right one, you will always think that buying the next one is going to solve the problem.
Yes.
When more than likely, you haven't tried everything with the gear that you already have.
Good point. You're actually right. One thing that I should mention as well is that sometimes the combination that you're actually using for the development of a guitar tone could be not the right one.
Mm-hmm.
But first, in order for you to end up in that particular conclusion, you gotta make sure that it's not because you didn't know how to dial it up correctly. You didn't make sure that you understood how the apparatus, the gear you're using actually works, if that makes sense. So because it's easier to put the blame on what you're rocking rather than putting the blame on your lack of skill when it comes to the instrument, or simply put, your lack of effort when it comes to learning your gear. For example, I have never sold anything that I own when it comes to gear. Not even my first guitar pedal is still there. Everything.
And being used.
And being used. Yes. Why? Because I am of the school of thought that when you buy something, you buy it already from the most educated perspective. I spend hours, countless of hours, whenever I'm hunting for the next piece to acquire. I spend quite a lot of time learning the possible options that I might be that could be within the range of what I'm looking for. And I actually even learn how to use them
even before having
them. Why? Because by doing so, I make myself sure that that whatever I buy would fit the needs for that particular moment and the application. I usually go for the best I can get, and that means that I buy gear not often. Why? Because the best I can get is usually not affordable.
I want to create a tangent here,
but this is from the perspective of a professional production house. Okay.
On the matter of buying the best you can get, which is usually a sound advice for anyone. Just get the best you can.
It is.
But how early do you think a musician or a music producer or anybody involved in music should go for high quality gear? Since day one?
I would say since day one, man. Because, for example, my first pedal, here is the controversial Boss OS2.
Why is it controversial?
Because it's weird sounding. No, it's because this pedal is just look at the position of the knobs. Look at the tone.
All the way down.
Yeah. Why? Because that sounded amazing.
Okay. Well.
But why? Because it was super shrieky. But it's a very cool sounding pedal if you know what you're doing with it. Excellent. Look at that. That's a better shot than this one. And I think they actually took them out of commission now. They're no longer sound. That's why I took it out of my board. Like, oh no.
Now it's a legacy pedal.
Yeah, right? Even more. Because that's the actual first piece of gear that I ever owned. So that guy, it's kind of controversial. And, it shows.
You can tell.
You can tell that it's been rocked around. That pedal is controversial because of the circuit itself. It says that it's distortion or overdrive, but in reality, it's like a very weird clipping mechanism that depends on how you push the color, because this is the killer.
Well, saturation.
But also changes the response, dynamic response, and even the EQ curve.
Okay.
So it's extremely responsive. So if you push it, I use it more as a mid boost or mid control rather than changing the clipping.
Okay.
But it sounds very good. But the thing is that it's controversial due to that. I think the run lasted basically 25 years. So it wasn't a bad. It wasn't not successful, man. So whatever.
Yeah.
Coming back to the whole point of this discussion, why I don't sell my gears, because I like to get stuff that works and stuff that is good since the beginning. This is the best I could get back in my early years, because this is not necessarily a ridiculously expensive pedal. It wasn't back then, but it isn't right now. But it wasn't a piece of crap. That's why it's still rocking and super efficient. It sounds as good as it did once, like back in the day. Like good stuff.
Yeah.
And I said the best you can get, not the best the market has to offer.
Yeah.
That's a very different and an important distinction, because if you buy something crappy, for example, in the case of pedals, if you go for those Chinesium-made knockoffs that are quite common on Amazon, they are very affordable, ridiculously affordable. I would even say cheap. Why? Because they're actually cheap.
Yeah.
Build quality is not going to be that good. chances are that the circuits are not properly isolated, so they will be noisy.
Yeah.
Or in the case of Behringer, the circuits will be properly procured, but the cases are made out of plastic.
Yeah,
and just think
plenty.
about something that you stomp on,
Yeah.
made out of plastic.
Yeah.
Back in my day, I saw plenty of kids
Yeah.
simply destroying the pedals on stage.
Yeah, and the fact that this guy, for instance, Stu Rocking, is a good argument for caring for materials.
Yeah, because his boss man is the best pedal manufacturer. Period.
Is it?
It is. I'm not gonna even dare to ask for changing them. No, things that Boss, the reputation they got is out of their legacy, man.
Mm-hmm.
They might not be. They are kind of in between, in the middle ground when it comes to what they do.
Mm-hmm.
But everything they do is always top notch.
But are you saying the Boss is better than Eventide?
Eventide is very recent in the game of pedals.
Mm.
It's been around for like probably 12 years maximum.
Their stuff is excellent.
It is, but things that Eventide used to make only Ragnar's.
Mm.
And the pedals have been a very, very recent development. They are fantastic.
Mhm.
The things that those are not affordable anymore.
No.
And even the smaller versions, for example, the Factor
Micro
or those are Factor pedals, I think. No, well, whatever. The .9 series, those guys are like $300. So it's already getting to the
high-end pedal.
high-end pedals.
Yeah.
So they do many things. They do it extremely well. But I would say that if you're starting off, you'd rather get 2 of these
Mm-hmm.
and save up for the third one being like one of those for $300.
Still on the early stages of guitar playing, what would be the first pedals that you think that every guitar player should have?
None. Get a good amp. No, first and foremost, get a good amplifier, man. Because the problem is that most guitar players go straight to the fun part, which is this.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can buy plenty of this.
Yeah.
An amplifier is a good chunk of money,
Yeah.
and you're gonna stick to that guy for probably the entirety of your life. Because if you get a good one, let's say a proper Marshall or a proper Fender, once you get it, it's your sound, man, and
Yeah.
it's basically the starting point for the development of your sound.
Yeah.
It's not the pedals. The pedals are something that you will use on top of the amp.
Mm-hmm.
So in modern days, I would rather recommend getting something like Tonics, a modeler for someone who is getting into this, so they can test around, because it's way more affordable spending money on a modeler that will have plethora of options, will have plenty of different digital recreations of a good chunk of amps that will allow the user to explore and learn and see what kind of sound they're looking for and finding the one that makes sense to them, and for them later on save on and buy the actual amplifier. Because a good amplifier is gonna you should be ready to spend $1,000 something.
Yeah.
So I prefer you to spend money on a proper on the base of your sound.
What about the guitar itself?
Also get something that is that's where
All guitars.
that's where I have a little bit of not controversial, but a little bit of a mixed bag opinion. Because I would rather buy a mid-range guitar, not top notch, and work on it rather than buying a high-end guitar. Because a mid-range guitar will allow you to actually not be afraid of taking it out, hitting stages and touring with it. Plus the added benefit of you being able to change and swapping parts, because that's very affordable. Swapping, for example, the pickups.
Yeah.
So if you change the pickups of your guitar, you will change the entirety of the guitar itself. It's gonna be basically a new guitar, allowing you to actually experiment in a very affordable way.
Yeah.
So I would recommend that a mid-range guitar. So in the guitar, I would recommend spending something like $800 or $1,000, if possible. Even $600 guitars could get the job done.
Yeah. Because on the 800 ballpark, you're already getting something good. Not incredible, but good.
No, good. It's already there, man.
Yeah.
The thing is that the difference, once you reach that stage, the difference between those guitars and the high end is the detail. For example, the fretboard is going to be better.
Yeah.
When it comes to the fretwork, so it's going to be properly filed. You get into the realm of fancy colors and fancy exotic materials and stuff that pushes the price higher.
Yeah.
And also the manufacturing it stops being mass manufactured, and it takes you to the realm of actual artisans working on them. So those prices start to dramatically. And for someone starting off, the skill, and not even the skill, the experience is not there yet for them to actually appreciate the master crafted guitar. I was thinking of Warhammer, master crafted weapon.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Look, the whole thing about going for the best that you can, I think is a very sound advice, not only because of that has been spoken about already, but I think that there's the whole notion that if you buy cheap, you buy twice.
Yeah.
And it's not only due to the equipment failing, because usually that's attributed to it breaking down or stopping working, but there's another side to it. It's not only simply because it's gonna stop working, but if you buy cheap, more than likely you're not gonna get the sound that you want, the sound that you're pursuing.
Chances are that you won't, but you would be surprised. Sometimes probably what you're looking for is the cheatiness. You might be looking for that particular dirty sound. Don't tell me that there has been moments in which some of your cymbals are not, some of the lesser end cymbals you got have saved the day.
Yeah.
Because they do that particular thing like, man, this is just garbage.
But here,
but I need it. Yeah. I can't get rid of it because when I need it and I do this, it does it well.
On the right moment, right?
Yeah, it's the weapon of choice for a particular moment, right? And it happens, man.
Yeah.
And that applies to everything because sometimes you need the trashiness, you need the dirty, the bad sounding stuff, man.
Yeah.
Because it has character. You don't look for precision in those moments.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But look, even to be able to identify when you need a bad sound, you need to already have a standard for a good sound. Because if everything sounds bad, how can you even have the taste to be able to pick? Okay, actually, a bad, and I'm using the word bad just for the lack of a better one, because it's not a bad sound. There's no bad sound. It's all about context.
Yes.
But there are sounds that are more commonly pleasant.
Yeah.
Or that they work more often.
Less controversial.
Because look, even we were talking earlier on about improving a little bit, or not even improving, getting a different set of cymbals.
Yes.
And you have a particular liking to the case.
Yes, the Siljan.
They are very good.
I love those. I have recorded them several times. Those are the go-to.
And they are kind of an industry standard.
Yeah, they are for that very reason.
There's a reason for it. It's not because they necessarily sound better.
They're consistent, and what they do, you can rely on.
Because there are plenty of different offerings when it comes to cymbals, and many of them sound good, but it goes beyond that. There's a sound that became the industry standard for a reason. It simply works.
It works.
And this simply works approach is what kind of defines what is the standard.
Yeah.
But at times you need something that will work, but it doesn't simply work. You will work on that particular occasion.
And no more.
Yeah, no more.
Yep.
But it's good to have. That's the kind. That's the flavors.
That's where. That's one of the reasons why I don't get rid of my stuff. Because when you look, I come from a very humble background. For those of you who don't believe me, yes, I do. So it was very difficult for me to acquire stuff. I started off with a very cheap guitar. I started off with just this pedal and a very tiny Yamaha practice amp, F20 if I remember. Yeah, is that they're still selling them because it's a workhorse, man. It sounds very practice ampy. I'm gonna put it that way.
Yeah.
It's not horrible, but it's simply tiny, man. And I spent almost a decade working with this because I couldn't get more. But that led me. I learned the art and science of learning how to rock your stuff correctly. It's not just I don't like it. No. Wait, why don't? It sounds bad. No, have you truly learned how to make it sound good? Yeah, before you make the decision. And that's what pushed me because I didn't have the option of going there and buying another one. So I had to learn my way around this bad boy. And thanks to that, okay, now I understand. It's not about gear. It's about knowledge. It's about knowing what to do with it.
Yeah.
Then the quality of the gear comes into play.
Yeah.
Because the more you know, and the better the gear, the better the sound. As simple as that.
Yeah. But did you know?
You need to know.
Yeah.
You need to know, and that's the hard part as well.
Yeah.
Because plenty of people, especially nowadays on social media, guitar circles. We're gonna get out of guitar now, but this is the final section because I think this is very important.
Yeah.
You see how the whole thing with pedal boards and collecting pedals has even become a hobby in and of itself. Why? Don't know, because right now we're living in the post boutique boom of the early 2000s era, and most of those boutique manufacturers are now very established manufacturers. So they are able to output, and kudos to them, well done, to output a good selection of pedals at a higher standard, beautifully crafted. For example, let me show you this roller saddle.
Let me go to it for a second.
Yeah,
So
there it is. I think it's easier if you show it.
yes. So
Yeah, look, that guy, the
there you go.
polymorph. It's a fantastic.
it looks very cool as well.
I love the
Yeah.
paint job. It's a flanger, but it's a very cool sounding flanger that I got, and it was part of my board for a good chunk of time. But I realized that it was not necessarily. I love the sound, but it was kind of redundant for the live use purpose. That the board I rock has an H9 by Eventide and an H90, so I have two multi-effects units that are super good.
It was a bit overkill.
Yes, and having a dedicated flanger was kind of dumb. So now it became part of the studio gear, and it's a fantastic sounding pedal. But look at the quality. The paint job is fantastic. The sound is insane. The build quality is built like a tank, and the price this is taking us to the mid-range pedals. That's probably the reason why we started to see this gigantic bump or this gigantic push or this hobby around collecting and assembling pedal boards and stuff.
Yeah.
And you got the workshipping guys. God damn it, get it? Their freaking boards are insane.
Yeah.
Talking about big chungus and not talking no bad blood with this comment. It's simply they play at church.
Yeah.
Look at the gear they're rocking.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts.
They have way better stuff than I do.
Yeah, no, I've seen some of the best rigs that I've seen.
Yeah.
On guitar, on drums, on
Everybody, right?
was actually in the church.
Worshiping.
Yeah.
Wow. So well done, guys. Yeah.
Look, just before we leave this part of the conversation about the whole thing about getting the best you can, or allowing yourself to put in something or enough money to get something that you know is going to be worthwhile.
Yes.
There's also another thing. It impacts the way that you care for your stuff. If you put a little bit more money in it, if you know that you're getting something of value, you put value in it.
Yeah.
And I mean this for instance, from the perspective of other drummers that I know that in the beginning, and sometimes they stick to it throughout their drumming lives, they buy crap, and they never actually get into the habit of caring for their stuff.
Oh,
People that, for instance, never learn the proper tracking technique of hitting cymbals because they break cymbals and they don't care because they just buy a new one.
Yeah, really, because they're cheap.
Yeah, and you've probably seen this kind of attitude being replicated on different musicians, just using the drums because it's the one that I've seen very closely. And I think that's a very...
What is the most common?
Yeah, it's possibly the most common. And it's a very bad attitude to have towards anything.
Yeah, it's a bad habit.
Honest. And I think another reason to actually invest in something of quality, it doesn't need to be the most expensive, but actually putting the effort into getting something that you know is good, is because you know that you're going to value it and you're going to take care of it. Even at a mental level, you kind of create a different approach towards your gear.
Yeah.
You try to make the most of it, you try to care for it, you try to use it for as long as you can. And that's how it should be, really.
Yeah, 100%. Now moving over to the drums, now that you mention it. What would be the... How does this syndrome manifest itself with drummers?
In drummers it's a little bit different, I think, than on guitar players. For one very particular reason. Drums are big, and most people, especially in the beginning, wouldn't actually have a space to take advantage of a gigantic drum kit with like say 10 different cymbals.
Options on top of options.
Yeah, you wouldn't even have or how to set it up. So yes, you do have it, the whole syndrome as well, but I think it's lesser because on guitars, coming back a little bit just as a reference, being able to pay like $150 for a box this size that you can put at any corner of your house,
yes,
you can feel that you can buy a lot of them without actually creating a problem.
And also has a little bit of the action figure thing going on, right?
Yeah. But try getting 3 different drum kits.
No, it's impossible. It's impossible.
And also, the drums, even though they have many moving parts, you can buy cymbals, you can have, but is a very customizable instrument. So allegedly, you would be able to do many things with it. But each individual part of the drums is expensive.
Yeah.
It doesn't. If you think of what instrument costs more, I don't think there's actually the drums. I don't think the drums win.
No, far from
But
it.
the thing is, on a piece by piece basis, I think drums are probably very expensive.
They are more expensive if you compare piece by piece.
Yeah, because if we're comparing to pedals, for instance, let's call it cymbals.
Yeah.
A good pedal is gonna be like $150. A good cymbal is gonna be like $350.
Yeah, because if you're talking about pedals that are around the $400, there are very few brands that comes to mind. One of them is Bemurem. Those are Japanese made. The enclosure is bronze, so it looks beautiful, man.
Yeah.
But it's more about the import tax than anything, because in Japan I saw the other day that they are sold for $200, but in here it's $400.
Okay.
So yeah, the jump is gigantic, and they're basically not clones. They're inspired by old circuits. For example, the SD9 by Ibanez, Maxon, the Nobles Clean Overdrive by Nobles. They also have a version too, but they're not rips off. They're more kind of takes on the same idea and push to a very beautiful limit.
Yeah.
They sound very good. I haven't tried one myself. I've been looking around because I will be soon in the hunt for new gear, and part of my objectives for expansion is getting a little bit of extra gear for guitar production, but not that much. Just like my budget would be just enough for 3 pedals maximum, and not stupidly expensive. It's just that I truly need certain particular pedals that I don't have here. But besides that, I don't think you can find a pedal other than one of those big ass digital pedals like the Eventides or your Big Boss pedals or one of those guys.
But in the end, they're replacing many pedals.
In the
they
case
do a
of
lot.
the multi-effects, yeah.
Yeah.
But for example, Boss has some a particular one of those pedals that I am in the look for is a Boss. I don't know exactly the model, but it's a big Chungus, and it's a bucket brigade, but it has like several stages of bucket brigade delay. So it's
Analog,
full on analog one, and it has like 10. So you can imagine how big and lush and messed up the delay becomes, and it's also a stereo.
Okay.
So I don't know if you might try that on synths.
Yeah,
on a Juno, for example. Just saying, that would be fantastic, man.
Yeah.
So that's why, but it's that we're talking like $500 on the pedal. But those are rare, man.
Yeah, and in the end, these ones kind of justify themselves because they truly are
very good,
above the curve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on the cymbals game, you need to get, if you don't spend, for example, let's say something around $300 on a crash, for example, you're buying crap.
Yeah, if you get like $150, you can find like
it's basically you just get one of the pans of your kitchen and you're gonna get something similar in sound. Not for real, man. Especially if you're recording, man. Because I can tell you that the reason why I love the case so much is because out of the stupid amount of cymbals that I have recorded, those were the ones that actually sounded like a professional record. Why? The drummers who owned them, they took care of them.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't cheap.
Yeah.
It wasn't pocket money.
Yeah.
So they learn how to take care of them, and by definition, they learn to get the most out of them.
Yeah.
So you're already rocking a good drummer. Secondly, those cymbals are extremely well crafted. The precision is always there, so you can rest assured that the sound is going to be basically the same from batch to batch.
Yeah.
So that's why it became the industry standard. Makes total sense. And also because they don't sound trashy when recording. The lesser quality cymbals, they might give you the pump when playing, right? But on the other side, the audience, how many times have you been to a pub where somebody's playing? There's the cover band.
Yeah.
And there is something that gets you kind of fatigued.
Yeah.
It's the cymbals. Because maybe every time that he crashes the crash, the beginning of the sound is correct, but then the resonance and the release tail of the sound, it's so and gnarly and annoying.
harsh.
It's harsh.
Mm-hmm.
That sums up with the sound of the rest of the band.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, loud volume, it becomes very tiresome, and it's due to the lack of quality on the cymbals.
Yeah.
So no, man, it's very important.
And look, there's something to be said about why one other reason why drummers usually don't fall prey that much to gear acquisition syndrome. And I don't mean this as a good thing now. It's actually something negative about drummers.
Are they?
No. No, I think drummers as a whole, in general, of course, hashtag not all, don't care too much about sound. Or they don't pay that much attention to sound quality, tuning, or the finesse, the fine aspects of sound.
Yes.
And because of that, they don't necessarily feel like they need to get something better or really work on finding their sound because they don't care too much about it.
Get you.
Because the whole search for tone, as you put it on guitar players, is not that common in drumming because of the nature of the instrument itself, but I don't think that's a good thing.
No, it's a very big problem.
Yeah, drummers should be as concerned about sound like as any other musician.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I don't know why that happens because I can agree with that one because I have seen it, seen it several times. Of course, hashtag not all, but a good chunk. A good chunk is very common. That practice is very common. I can see that it's international. So
it is everywhere.
Yeah, it's kind of like a cultural thing, right?
But I think it's because, to some degree, the nature of the instrument, since it's not melodic or harmonic in nature.
For as long as it sounds like
a drum kit, it's a drum kit.
We're on it.
Of course, this is not the correct approach, even though I'm saying kind of putting a little bit of the blame in the instrument itself, but the drummer should take responsibility for how good he sounds.
I agree with that.
So, yeah.
Good point. But look, I think when it comes to going for this gas approach, when it comes to drumming, I think it's usually on the cymbals, right?
Yeah, usually it is.
Because the cymbals, they are kind of like, I would use the watch collecting hobby as kind of the similar, right?
Yeah.
Because since they are not necessarily cheap, drummers kind of flex by having a good chunk of cymbals on top of their kits.
Yeah.
Because that actually looks massive. And space-wise, it's possible because it's basically on top of the drums, so the surface is not that they cover is not going to be that bigger.
And look, to some degree, it's actually justifiable to have variety.
It's like pedals. It's the equivalent to pedals. I get you.
Because not every cymbal is gonna work for everything.
No.
So even though you have cymbals that are versatile, and I'd say some of the best cymbals they
like
would.
The Splash.
No, but I'm talking
like
even.
The Splash is one of the one-trick ponies.
Yeah, but I'm not talking even in different types of cymbal. I'm talking about models and qualities. Like a high-quality cymbal, usually you would be able to use it in a wide variety of applications.
Yes.
Is it going to be perfect for everything? Of course not. But it is versatile.
Yeah.
But let's say you need something trashier, it would be good for you to have a trashier cymbal.
Yeah, but
there are uses for it.
But if you're gigging and you have constraints when it comes to the space for traveling, you're going to be the ones that can cover more ground.
Yeah.
Rather than getting that special guy.
Yeah.
Because the same what happens with pedal boards. If you are truly into moving around, you're going to try to get the slimmest set up as possible. So that means compromising, and the same applies to drummers.
Definitely.
You're not going to be able to, unless you get the budget for Tool, for example. You would be able to actually carry that a monstrosity like the guys. That dude, like those guys rock. But yeah, but it's kind of fun to see how the same syndrome applies to everybody. It's just depending on the approach.
It is.
Because when it comes to now the nerd, the guy who's producing music or mixing, I think that's the biggest of the rabbit holes.
You think?
I think it's even worse than guitars.
Why?
Because options abound. It's super hard to do it right, especially when you're getting started. So it's very easy to put the blame on the gear, because the vast majority of people begins with plugins, and plugins are not necessarily cheap, but they are affordable, and they are usually on sale. So it's easy for you to be convinced by marketing stunts to actually buy the next one, thinking that this is finally the plugin that is going to change the sound of all of my mixes. And one thing, plugin, for those of you who are not familiar into the nerdiness, first and foremost, well done. You shouldn't. But a plugin is basically speaking a tiny program that you run inside of your main audio editing software, let's say Logic Pro. or Pro Tools that you use to record and then edit and mix, right? And those plugins can be the recreation of compressors, equalizers, preamps, guitar amplifiers, modelers and stuff. They come in all sorts of varieties. And they are not cheap, but they are easy to acquire. And they are actually even easier. Well, they're even cheaper when you sell the high Cs. And they are very commonly found over there. I don't condone that approach. On hashtag, I don't own pirate software. I actually don't.
Well done.
Whatever. But why? Once again, the mentality. Wait a second. I need to learn how to use everything I own.
Yeah.
Especially because I'm charging. So if I'm charging people for through the use of these tools, I gotta make sure that first I pay for them.
Yeah.
Because it's morally correct.
Yeah.
And secondly, since I'm paying, I better spend my money wisely because I might end up just buying something that doesn't get the job done.
Yeah.
And since they're very affordable, man, just start to select people who have insane libraries of plugins. And that's on the software side.
Yeah.
When you go to the outboard gear,
then it gets...
Damn! You've been working in these dubious organizations for a while. What was your impression, first and foremost? Pricing.
I was a little bit blown away because I always knew that for you to have, of course, for anything that you want to have top notch, you're going to have to pay for it.
Of course.
But depending on what industry you're talking about, that price might vary. Because you're always going to have to pay more to have the better stuff.
Yeah.
But more here is kind of insane.
Yeah, you're talking about jumps of 5K.
Yeah, like you have single pieces of gear that can go up to $10,000-$15,000.
Easily.
And we're not even talking about something that
a console
is gonna do, like, it's gonna be transformative in what you do. It might
just
be
for one microphone.
Yeah, no, it's it goes very deep.
Yeah.
It goes very deep.
It's insane, right?
Yeah.
The amount of money and this business and its sibling, the video production side of things. God damn.
No, it goes insane.
The prices are ridiculous for the actual professional standard stuff.
Let me ask you something, because on the most part you will see some of those very high prices when we're talking about analog gear, right? Talking about the boxes.
Yes.
On the most boxes have some form of digital recreation.
Yes.
Some form of plug-in version of it.
Yeah.
Most of them.
Yeah.
Do you think it's still justified nowadays to go for a box that costs, let's say, 100 times more than the plug-in variant that does the same?
Let me put it this way. The plugins are probably 97% there when it comes to the sound, right? First thing. Secondly, they are affordable. So everybody can get them.
Yeah.
That means that everybody has 97% of the sound. Want to be competitive?
You need that extra 3%.
That 3%, man. And that 3% makes the difference.
Yeah.
So I think
that makes sense.
That's the way I see it, man.
Yeah.
It's very expensive.
Yeah.
And the thing is that there are plenty of knockoff versions of many things as well. There are plenty of clones. The same what happens with pedals. You see in analog gear. And there are tons and tons of cheaply made, terrible sounding, with the occasional miracle, of course, box that some of them are scams, man, because people like to feel that they are advancing in their career by having racks stuck up with crap, and that's not the way to go, man.
Yeah.
Again, actually, those were two of the first pieces I ever got.
I think they
might be
kind of see a little bit this.
Yeah, those guys over there. It's a BBE. What's the name of that? Harmonizer or something. I don't know exactly what it does because I don't even know what it does. And a TC Electronics G Major 2, fantastic multi-effects unit. The BBE, it's actually designed for live sound. It's designed to be used as the final chain before going to the mains.
Okay.
And it's used to maximizer is what it does. What the name is. And what it does, it's a little bit of compression, a little bit of EQ, a little bit of boosting the highs and the mids, and kind of it's a weird thing.
Plus pixie dust, of course.
No, it's not. The thing is that it got a bad rep
Mm.
because it's not expensive. You can get those for $250 maximum.
Okay.
That's new.
Mhm.
If you go for the used one, you could get for 100 easily. I got it as my first piece of outboard gear in the studio without knowing what it did. I got it because it was cheap. And then I began doing research because I already got it. Okay, now let's see what I can do with this thing. I had no idea. And I realized that nobody liked it. I said, okay, but I like to be a contrarian, so I'm gonna like it. No, why people don't like it? They don't know what to do with it because in the studio, when I started to ask around guys on the sound on the live sound circle, and they started to explain to me how they use it. Oh, okay, makes sense. You know where it shines? The loop back of a Marshall. It tightens up the sound in a way like badass. It is that good that you can get it in a pedal format.
Okay.
Yeah, it's amazing. Also, synths, if you use it, it changes the dynamic of the synth. Completely different. You haven't seen me using it because we haven't used it on the shows, but it's a fantastic unit, man. If once you learn to use it, but you see how I got there, right? Once again, the mentality. I already own it. Squeeze the lemon.
Make the most of it.
Make the most out of it because it was a not necessarily a sound decision from a business perspective because I did it out of my impulse of wanting to have something on my rack.
Yeah.
Because I didn't own a rack at that point, man. So like, if I'm recording in a legit fashion, at least I have to have something to show, man.
All cool guys have rack units.
Yeah.
I need a rack unit.
It was basically that, man. But in reality, it actually, I even used it to sell the studio. The studio wasn't a studio back then. It was more about my services.
Yeah.
Because at least I looked legit. I got something that looked like a serious piece of gear.
Look, and even
that could have been the justification.
No, but look, even as getting close to the end of the conversation, I think this is actually something that needs to be remarked as well, because musicians, you have two variants. Sometimes you have the ones that call themselves the purists.
Yes.
That no, it's all about the sound, the looks don't matter, and whatever.
Yeah.
And look, the same that applies for a musician on stage. The looks do matter.
Oh, 100%.
Gear looking good also has its uses. Because I know it's not the main thing. No, it's not the main thing. It's not the most important by any means. It's what it does and what you can do with it.
Yep.
But let's say even your example, you're running a studio, having shiny toys that people look at it and the studio feels legit. It gains credibility because of them. That already pays for itself.
And look, on that note, the second acquisition I did, the second purchase for the studio, was buying a console that I never used. It was there for the looks.
But I imagine it paid for itself as well.
100%.
Yeah, exactly.
100%. And it was a big ass 24 bringer mixer designed for live sound. And I got it very cheap. It was used, of course. So I had it there. It was the first thing they saw. It looked like it's too sold.
Yeah.
Sold, man. So in that regard, I did it as a marketing stunt based on what you just said. You are 100% correct. Looks are super important. So yeah, just to see that there are some ways to justify certain, not necessarily sound. No, they are sound decisions in the end because for as long as there is a purpose and a justification for the acquisition of the gear, it's not part of the syndrome.
Agreed.
100%.
Agreed.
100%. And nowadays, the pursuit of gear, in my case, has changed because when it comes to my guitar playing, I think I'm done. When it comes to my board, I have it there. That's why I'm looking over there.
Yeah.
Because it does everything I needed to do, and more. Why? Because I wanted to get something that would allow me to write more music, but also be compact, portable, and powerful. Yeah. And that board is insane.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing with going wet, dry, wet in one out of the box without having amplifiers and stuff. It's a very complex system. I am planning on releasing a video explaining the whole shebang in this channel, but further down the line because I'm still in the final tweaking aspects of the whole board, but it's very, very good. I also have a mini board that is underneath your chair That's the one I use here in the studio. And sometimes live for tinier gigs
Yeah.
that don't require the big one.
Yeah.
And that one is also finished. It's the kind of stuff that I'm done. The problem is that the studio needs plenty of gear.
Yeah.
And that's where my chase for my compulsion, my gas, won't stop. How about you?
Let me see. Because
You're humble. You're already saying.
No, I have everything I need in life.
Yeah.
No, I feel that there's a development, a natural development that goes through, any musician goes through in their musical journeys if they decide to carry them for life. The beginning, you're kind of trying to find your sound.
Good.
And I think that's a good moment to try different things.
Yeah, 100%.
I think there's a point that comes later where, okay, I got my sound. Let's say I already have what I need to make my sound.
Better.
And then there's another push that comes later on. Probably you're gonna plateau in the purchase of gear for a while because you already have your sound. But then you feel the need to push forward. And then you're gonna get stuff that is maybe a little bit more esoteric, is a little bit more different, and is a little bit more focused on detail rather than the big stuff. Because if you already have your sound, you don't need anything that's gonna transform the way you play. But you need enhancers, you need stuff that's gonna give that extra shine.
I get you.
And I think those are usually not in bulk, but they're expensive.
Yeah,
Because
you're
we're
starting to
talking-
get to the very, very refined stuff.
Yeah, because let's say like there's a particular, just as one example, there's a particular line by Zildjian.
Oh, I know which
that's
one.
the Carob. Is I think
It's the highest they got.
the highest they got.
Those are for studio use, man.
Yeah, and they have like a couple of rides that I freaking love.
Yeah, but how much? What's the damage reduced?
I think they're like
8,000, right?
they're kind of absurd. I think like
Really?
one set of them is like $4,000 something.
The
Like that.
set.
Yeah,
We're talking probably 1,000 per
yeah
symbol.
per symbol. Yeah.
That's
Even
a lot
more.
of knots, man.
Yeah. When can you justify something like that? Once you have everything else covered.
Yeah, but you're already high end.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
get
yeah.
you. No, but I think the same way as you do, man.
So I think I'm probably very soon gonna be jumping into those specific
But
fine
one
tuning
by one.
one by one,
Get you.
because it's once okay. All the base, it's more than having the bases covered. Now it's pursuing that refinement.
The final push.
Yeah.
I get you, man, because
Like octobans.
yeah.
I want
No,
octobans.
they look bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this. And yeah, just for the looks, and they gotta be acrylic.
Yeah,
Acrylic.
they do.
Yeah, but it's that kind of stuff because I think at that point you're no longer infected by the gas.
The thing is that in objectively speaking, no drummer truly needs them. Is the kind of stuff that is truly an extra.
No, but look, for example, recording. That's why I said I wouldn't carry with me $4,000 on cymbals.
Yeah.
Being frank.
Yeah.
But I would have them for the studio.
Mhm.
What, they sound amazing.
Yeah.
If they sound like that live recording, then it's gonna be a charm. And what's gonna happen? Better sounding recordings, better sounding mixes, better selling records. That's the reason why I would get them. I don't see any problem with that. The same what happens with high-end amplifiers.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you need them? Not because I'm gonna rock the world around. I'm gonna travel around the world rocking with them.
Yeah.
That would be stupid. Why? They could be stolen. First, second, they will be damaged. They will. It's not if.
On the live game, it's just a matter of time.
Yeah. And cymbals, dude, nah. Man.
Yeah.
So that's why you get the workhorses. But you get the good stuff for the moments of high precision, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
That's why certain piece of gear will end up used only in recordings or not even rehearsals, man. Because why would you trash them for rehearsals?
Yeah.
No, go straight for those when you're gonna do something that requires the best.
Yeah.
Guitar pedals. That's where I have a different take, man.
Mm.
Because Jimi Hendrix used poorly made guitar pedals. Everybody used the big chungus used off the shelf pedals. The whole thing with boutique, it wasn't a thing, man. So yeah, you can get the whole thing with the Bemur and with the bronze enclosure and yeah, it looks amazing, but it's like buying a Rolex
Yeah.
when you can rock a G-Shock. The Rolex has its place,
Yeah.
but the G-Shock is the one that you use when you are in the middle of the battlefield,
Yeah.
which is the live show. So no.
And it still gets the job done.
And dude, this is the saddest part. The audience can tell the difference from the K series, the good, cymbals are already top, the high end, but still within range. They're sensibly priced, not sensibly, but not as stupidly priced.
Yeah.
The audience can tell the difference from those and the lesser ones. But from the K to those guys,
they can't.
No, they can't.
They can't.
Only you know.
Yeah,
Only the musicians and the people producing records, right?
Yeah.
The same happens with amplifiers, with pedals.
Yeah, it's true.
Because
and the most expensive jumps in quality are the ones that reflect in a lesser jump in perceived quality.
And how much of it is not the equivalent to tone wood, the tone wood phenomenon. Tone wood is... look, I'm gonna get flamed by this, but wherever.
Hot take.
Hot take. Look, guitar. Got a guitar here. Yeah. Okay. This guitar. This is my working horse. This is a CRE guitar. Is the ones that fold. I love that. Let me show you. Briefly, I'm not gonna fold it completely. By doing this, there's a lever here. Look at this. Wow. Yeah, this is amazing. And this is my main working horse. Exactly, like that.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. This guy is the one that I use for basically everything outside of the studio and in the studio. Why? Because it sounds exactly how I like it. I had worked countless hours. I was there to testify in that regard, working on the filing because it was very good out of the factory. The thing is that this is a $1,500 guitar, mid-range, high mid-range.
Yeah. Good, but not top of the line.
Not top of the line. And what makes a guitar, an electric guitar, top of the line is the final details that make it feel better for your playing style. Okay. So I worked heavily on it, and I finally got to the point where yes, like this.
This is it.
This is it. But then I started to add mods. For example, they don't come with this button here. This is a kill switch, added by me.
Yeah.
Then also I added an extra circuit here with the coil tab, right? Whatever. Tone wood. How much wood do you got in here? Basically nothing. That's why. Look, this is the back of the guitar, and this is hollow. There is nothing here. Why? Because the mechanism is very heavy. So it's just to compensate for the shape.
Yeah.
It sounds amazing. You have heard plenty of the musical examples that are part of the channel with this guitar.
Yeah.
It sounds like a Les Paul. Yeah, period. It does.
Yeah.
And the pickups are fantastic. It's the Seymour Duncans, the traditional Seymour Duncans, 50 something, whatever, I don't know, 59 I think. So, tone wood is the meat that depending on the quality of the wood, the electric guitar will sound better. Woods make sense if you are talking about an acoustic guitar, of course, because the tone is out of the resonance of the box, the actual shape of the guitar itself, and the quality of the materials. But in an electric guitar, it's pickups, man.
Yeah.
It's pickups and electronics. The wood has nothing to do with it. So I think the same applies to the whole thing with certain pedals, with certain instruments, with certain uber high end stuff, the boutique stuff.
Yeah.
I have certain level of skepticism because like, okay, how much of it is not psychosomatic? Being very honest.
Well, look, we're talking about
those
the
cymbals.
production.
I have no issues. I know what you mean. They are amazing. It's the best you can get. But certain pedals.
No, look, even the recording.
Yeah.
The SM57 is still the workhorse for the entire industry.
Yeah.
It runs on those. Every major studio probably has a collection of just SM57s.
And you will find that when you're recording guitars, when you're actually microphoning cabinets.
Just quick demo. The SM57 is probably one of the most basic microphones that you can get.
Yeah, we have like 4 in here, but I don't know where they are.
Because they are quite cheap when it comes to microphones.
Yeah, they're like $100.
Yeah.
150, I think.
Yeah.
New. If you go for one used, which you will find plenty.
Yeah.
Dude, they might be asking for $50, maybe, but also be aware of the knockoffs because it's such a good design. There are plenty of Chinesium cheap knockoff pirate versions. But whatever. Coming back to the whole thing with my skepticism, I think the 57. You will see that plenty, if not the vast majority of guitar tones recorded, end up being just the SM57.
And coming out of studios that have a wide variety of microphones that cost like 10 to 20 times that one.
Trumping over something like, I don't know, a Neumann 87, a microphone that, depending on the version you get, because if you go for a Telefunken, you're talking about $20,000 to $30,000 just the goddamn microphone.
Damn.
Now in mind, where should you be plugging that microphone to?
Yeah.
The channel strip has to be oof, right, for you to justify the use of that gun, that weapon. And the SMP-57 comes on top. Why? It does the
it works.
It works.
Simply works.
So maybe that's the reason why I have that skepticism when it comes to gear. Due to my background in music production and mixing, because you start to see, wait a second, there's plenty of pixie dust in many things. There's a lot of moju. There's a lot of, wait a second, wait a second. Yeah, you start to give second thoughts at everything. So yeah, that will be my hot take of the day. What will be yours to finish this off?
So to finish off, I think that the whole thing about buying gear is not intrinsically good or bad. There are ways to do it. Because as a musician, we are in a creative trade, and having variety, having the different sounds, having different sources of inspiration can actually take your playing in different directions, which is something positive. But for as long as you don't use this as an excuse to simply be buying stuff, not because you want to expand, let's say, the color palette of your playing, but simply because you're trying to compensate some of the shortcomings of your own playing, of your own technique, and not wanting to take responsibility for not having your sound right or not getting the results that you wanted out of your performance with gear. And trying to fill that hole with more in the next and the next and the next box and the next piece of gear, which is way more common than any of us would like to acknowledge.
And every single one of us have fell prey to it at one point. That's also something that we have to admit.
But we need to try to acknowledge whenever it happens, and okay, this is on me.
Yeah. It's the hard pill to swallow that nobody wants to take.
Yes.
Yeah. In my case, I would suggest, as usual, invest time rather than money on your skills. Because you will get more mileage out of learning how to use your stuff. And I am a huge proponent of developing manual skills. Learn to do the basic setups. For example, on the guitar, learn a little bit of clipping, or not clipping, how a guitar pedal actually works. There are plenty, I don't have books right now here, but there are plenty of books, fantastic books, that are all about these guys. That have taught me plenty of things. And even though we get the magic of YouTube, always literature has more, goes way deeper than a YouTube video. So YouTube is a good source, but also expand. Put a little bit more effort on it. Because you'll see that you will get much more mileage out of whatever you got just by learning rather than buying new stuff. And that applies to performing live, working with gear like this, in the production studio, if you happen to be one of those lost souls. Because it's more important for you to develop skills rather than to acquire gear. So please do that.
Sound advice. It is. Very good.
Thank you.
So, boys, I think that was it for today. We have conversations like this on a weekly basis. Every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Central. We're here talking about something pertaining to the music industry and music as we know it.
Because the idea is for us to share with you some of the knowledge we have acquired throughout the different years, the years that we've been doing this. Why? Not because we're thankful. It's because there is some form of responsibility. Because there is plenty of stuff that if I would have known when I began, it would have changed many things in my life.
True.
And in my case, I think Thiago will say the same, that now that we know it's better, we have this particular need of sharing those acquisitions of.
Indeed. So if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, that way you can be notified whenever we do this again, and you can be here for the next conversation. And also, if you want to support this channel even further, you can also listen to our music on Apple Music or Spotify. And
not with this guitar.
Yes. And follow us on social media, such as Instagram and X. And also our Discord, which is in the description of this video, and we can keep the conversation going over there.
Perfect. So with that being said, the only thing to be reminded is that you should never let anybody tell you what to dream about. And remember that we will see you when we see you. With that.
Beautiful.
Wrong button.
No, it wasn't.
Didn't. Oh, wait a second. I know what's going on.
So,
see
you around, girls and boys.
That ass.